Hello, students. So today, finishing up the last section of chapter 25. The section is titled "The Islamic Heartland Under Pressure." So we covered A in class, but I'm going to finish off the remainder in this video. So starting with Egypt from reform to British occupation. So Muhammad Ali, he set out to build a nation on the strength of a powerful army trained in the same fashion as the European militaries. So thousands of African slaves were brought to Egypt to serve in the army, but they did not survive. So Egyptian peasants were then used as replacements. So movements against the weakened Ottoman Empire, it allowed Muhammad Ali to advance into Syria, but he was convinced to retreat by the European powers. So he was then rewarded with hereditary powers over Egypt and Sudan. So at the time of his death, Muhammad Ali, he established a strong state with the Ottoman Empire. So to gain economic stability, Muhammad Ali, he established agricultural production that he intended to ship to the European markets. So when Ali's grandson took control, thousands of Europeans were living in Egypt. So Ismail, who was Ali's grandson and the new ruler of Egypt, he envisioned a vast empire throughout northern Africa. He also hoped to use European technology and capital to establish the North African Empire. So the exports of cotton, it increased to Europe, and Ismail, he borrowed large sums of money from the Europeans, and together with a French company, he built the Suez Canal. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Suez Canal or, keep up with everyday news. This right here is Egypt, the Mediterranean Sea, the Gulf of Suez, the Ottoman Empire, because all of this over here is Arabia. Sinai. So this is the Suez Canal. And so the Suez Canal, like right now, at this moment in the world, it has this huge container that came from Japan, and it's a container ship, and it's blocking like hundreds of ships because it turned sideways. And they said if you turn it upside down, it's like taller than the New York Empire State Building. So imagine that. And the canal is a canal, is only a certain size. So it's like blocking it sideways. So yeah, I read that this morning. This right here, this is Muhammad Ali, the Albanian born ruler of Egypt in 1839. As y'all can see, he right there with his hookah and his knife. And he got one of his rulers, I mean not his rulers, one of his servants fanning him. His hookah, his knife, and he good. So cultural changes accompanied the political and economic ones. So Arabic, it became the official language. European educated Egyptians, they spread their skills throughout the countries. So although Egypt, they changed quickly under Ismail's rule, the changes were quite expensive. When Egypt could not pay its debt, France and Great Britain, they intervened to protect the European investments. So now Europeans were now in control of Egyptian finances. So, foreign financial control did not sit well with nationalistic minded Egyptians. So, Ismail, he was forced to abdicate in favor of his weak son, Tufik. So, bloody anti-European riots ensued, and Tufik had to flee to British ships for safety. So, the Great Britain bombed Alexandria, and British Expeditionary Force it decimated the rebel forces. So the British took control and their armies remained until 1956, which was not long ago. And this right here is an Egyptian travel guide. So the expanding world economy. So the rise of global inequality. So non-industrializing regions, they were identified as the third world countries. Um, so these regions were either the last to gain their independence, uh, from the European empires or the last to be colonialized by the European empire. So industrialization, it established a higher rate of pay, and the nations that were not based on modernized technology, they remained on a pre-industrial pay scale, which kind of kept them behind. So the technologically advanced nations, they had dominated the less advanced, but this was to be expected. Hence, the reason Peter the Great was adamant about getting Imperial Russia up to date with Western advancements. So, we've already talked about that, but we talked about it, of course, um, another chapter. So this is a growth of average income per person worldwide, 1750 to 1914. And so the third world, it includes Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Oceania. And developing countries include all of the European countries, Canada, the United States, and Japan. All right. So getting into the world market. So Great Britain, it tied the world's market together with its empire and trade routes. So, I've always, I told you guys this earlier that, Great Britain has always, all European countries are leading countries and nations, but Great Britain has always been at the top. So technological breakthroughs that were established in the British world, it encouraged the continuation of the trade. So British manufacturers, they had the foresight to seek new export markets. The government also repealed laws restricting importation of grain. So the free access to British markets, it kept the mines and plantations of Africa and Asia operating. Um, the United States and the Western Hemisphere, they built long networks of railroads that shipped goods and reduced transportation costs. So the steam of the railroad locomotive or the steam from the industrial boiler, it kept these manufacturers in motion. So new raw materials such as cocoa, coffee, and rubber, it kept world markets and buyers busy. So massive investments were made with the intention of financial returns. So this provided the capital to continue the development of the technologically advanced society. And so this is the British East African Railway poster. Safaris Deluxe, The Simple Life in a Reliable and Healthy Climate. New novel and interesting to the blase tourist. British East Africa, Uganda Railway. So, the Great Global Migration. So, we've been talking about this whole course. Millions of people left their traditional homelands in search of a better life. And this phenomenon was called the Great Migration. So many moved westward where technologically advanced civilizations offered much more opportunities than Eastern states. So European cities, they became overpopulated when rural farm workers moved in search of industrial employment. So wars, famines, poverty, and discrimination, it led others to move to new locations and to begin life again. So North and South America, um, New Zealand and Australia, they were lands that were open to immigration. So entire villages would follow after a member scouted out new destinations. So this phenomenon was identified as chain migration, which is a key term for you guys. And so that still kind of goes on, here, in America, you might have someone from Africa or somewhere from Asia or somewhere from, um, Latin America, and they might come over here on behalf of them and their family to find a location for them to kind of move and set up shop or whatever the case may be. So Asians, they entered the west coast of North America to help build industrial and mining operations. And they, I've said this before, they moved into the West Coast because they were right there on the east and they were closer. Just as the Europeans, they came to America on the East Coast because they were in the West. So racism and discrimination, it tended to follow along with them. Discriminatory laws established by Americans and Australians were intended to keep Asians and others from settling in their countries. All right, so this is Mulberry Street in 1900 in New York. So as you can see, like it's a little bit of everybody. These are not Americans; these are all immigrants from different countries. And and then in America we have the Great Migration too. But see, this is the Great Global Migration. But in America, we had the Great Migration, which came later on, in between the 1940s and 50s. And this is when almost, half of the black population in the South, they left and they went out to, metro cities in the East, in the North, and in the West. St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles. This is how, black people got to those places. And we'll get there, talk a little bit about it. It's world civilization, not American history. All right, and so that's it for chapter 25. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave you guys that information. So when we come back Monday, we can hop straight into chapter 26. Have a great weekend.